All right, so good afternoon once again, everybody, and welcome to the AmZetta Virtual Lunch and Learn event. My name is Andrew Lacey. I'm a Sales and Marketing Manager, and I'm going to be your host and presenter for the Lunch and Learn event today. But also with me is George Rodriguez from our engineering side. He's one of our senior solutions engineers. He's going to be presenting a demo of the digital workspaces software that we'll be discussing today, following a slide deck. But before we get started, just wanted to go through a couple of real quick housekeeping items. So first off, if you are in the pizza delivery zone and you have requested a pizza during your registration, that pizza should arrive in the next few minutes if it has not already. Sometimes the delivery person does run a few minutes behind, but if they are running late, please just be patient. But on the other hand, just let us know if it hasn't arrived within the next about 5 to 15 minutes. Email is going to be the quickest way to let us know if it hasn't arrived or if you have had any issues with that. And the best way to get a hold of us via email is going to be sending an email to kenneth@amzetta.com. And we've listed that at the bottom of the bottom right-hand corner of, I think, every slide on this presentation, just for convenience sake there. And also worth noting for those of you that are on the West Coast, just due to when, I think it's Domino's, opens all of their stores, those pizzas will be arriving at 11 a.m. local time, Pacific time. Second item, please feel free. Ask questions throughout this presentation. You can do so using the Q&A chat, which should be located at the bottom of your screen, I believe, by default on Zoom. And George is going to be answering those the best that we can as we go along through the presentation. So please don't hesitate to ask us some questions as we go through. And I also have, I think, 3 poll questions that I've created that I'll kind of sprinkle in here as we're going throughout the slide deck, just to mix it up a little bit. You know, don't want death by PowerPoint, right? So last thing, if we do experience any technical issues at all, such as losing audio, if you get a poor resolution, please just bear with us for a little bit while we resolve it. These are very rare. We've been very fortunate, you know, knock on wood, in the past with doing these events and haven't had really any issues. But as I'm sure all of you know, these types of technical issues don't tend to happen at the most opportune times. But I think that's it for all of the housekeeping items. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. So just a quick agenda to start things off of what we're going to be covering today. We'll start off with a quick introduction of company introduction of AmZetta Technologies. Then we'll do an overview and start getting into digital workspaces software in general. And then we're going to dive into some of the use cases for digital workspaces and the specific solutions that they have to offer. And we're going to cover, naturally, AmZetta digital workspaces are offering in our software products and how they fit into those solutions that we discussed, as well as a quick overview of our cloud sandbox, where you can actually test out our workspaces software in a cloud hosted instance to evaluate it at no charge. And that'll wrap that up for the slide deck, and then George is going to show a demo of our Workspaces software, and we'll answer some of the questions that we received from you all when you registered for the event. We had some pretty good technical questions come in, so we'll field those. And we do typically allot for an hour for these webinars, but there's a good chance that we'll wrap things up a little bit early and give everyone a little bit of extra time on their lunch break. So who is AmZetta? We are technically a fairly new company, founded in April of last year, April of 2019, but our roots are actually from American Megatrends Incorporated, or AMI, who I'm sure most of you know from AMI BIOS, which is one of, if not the most prevalent BIOS chip in the world. And AmZetta Technologies, we were spun off from AMI as a separate entity, separate company focusing on engineering solutions in largely in emerging technology spaces. And so we're very excited about this since we have a narrower focus now, while also retaining the expertise, the talent, and the leadership from from AMI. Our worldwide headquarters is in Norcross, Georgia, just outside Atlanta, where we've been for 35 years now. And we are heavily focused on engineering, as you can see on this slide, with about 80% of our 150 plus employees working in some capacity in that engineering space. And just a quick collage of some of our customers. I don't spend a tremendous amount of time on this, but certainly isn't exhaustive. But we do have thousands of installations across the country and world in virtually every industry: education, finance, government, state, local, you name it, healthcare as well. And while the majority of our customers are small to medium-sized businesses, we also do work a good bit in the enterprise area as well. So, like I mentioned, I don't spend a whole lot of time on the slide, but I do like to show that we do serve customers in just about every industry. And many of these companies have been customer of ours for some of them well over a decade. So let's start getting into digital workspaces now. And I'm sure that most of you are already somewhat familiar with digital workspaces software, which has seen just an incredible demand since the COVID pandemic and the ensuing push for companies to begin working remotely, since digital workspaces essentially remove the barriers of brick and mortar offices to allow users to work from virtually anywhere and from any device without compromising the security of their corporate network or the security of those endpoint devices that their users are utilizing to access their network. So as you can imagine, digital workspaces have seen a ton of growth recently because they enable businesses to adapt to changing working environments at just a moment's notice. And at the same time, ensuring uptime, ensuring those business operations are continually as usual and avoiding any type of costly interruptions. And some of the benefits of digital workspaces software we've listed out here, so I'll just touch on them real quick. The first one is just the security benefit. Digital workspaces, they greatly strengthen security over traditional VPNs, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a minute. Saves money, especially over the long term, since you can leverage your existing hardware, including your servers, core network equipment, endpoint devices for your users. Greatly simplifies management as well, since all users can be managed from just a single interface. Workspaces also enhance the user experience, since you can enable users to utilize their own devices rather than adopting new and potentially unfamiliar devices. They allow you to manage user and configure user permissions, such as what applications users have access to increase productivity. And last but not least, it allows you to quickly scale as you add new clients, new users, new devices, etc. So actually, before I get on this, I think I had a poll question I was going to start real quick. I'll give us about another 10 more seconds or so. It looks like we still got some answers coming in. Awesome. Greatly appreciate everybody's participation there. It's always good to get a good bead and a good gauge on what type of technology folks are using these days, and especially with things changing the way that they are. But diving into our first use case here, and our first and how we've kind of broken this down, it's really just between like challenges and solutions. And so on this first one here on the left, you have the first challenge that we'll talk about with traditional or legacy tech, is that it simply wasn't architected with remote work in mind. Traditional IT is largely characterized by local applications, or just having applications everywhere, you know, on-prem, in the cloud, web-based, et cetera. And also just data sprawl, where you have users storing their data locally on notebooks, laptops, desktops, and doing, you know, individual backups of their data without designated backup locations. There's also the issue of security, which is a huge one, where most remote workers are just using standard VPNs and personal devices that can potentially expose their corporate network to outside threats. And the last challenge with traditional IT is the need to upgrade and purchase new equipment whenever a new solution is deployed, a new, typically software solution is deployed, or a new process or a standard is adopted just to adhere to those new requirements. So how we tackle each one of those and how Digital Workspaces really addresses each one of these challenges. On the right, the first solution that Digital Workspaces offers to these issues is that it centralizes all of those applications where they can be more easily managed by the admins, but also more easily accessed by users. So you can configure app access from just a single point, like a single interface where you can manage all of your app access permissioning. You can set up application-specific access at like the user level and things like that. So they also consolidate user data through virtual desktops. So you can keep all of your user data backed up to a single location, so it's easier to manage, and you can avoid single points of failure that are associated with those traditional endpoint devices. And they also enable you to set up a true zero trust gateway, or you might also know it as a zero trust network, goes by both names, where you can easily implement new security protocols like MFA, multi-factor authentication. You can configure permissions on a user level or a device level. And finally, the last solution here is that Workspaces allow you to keep your existing hardware. So it's really a paradigm shift from traditional IT, where we're moving away from that, making hardware adapt to new software, and moving more towards software that can adapt to your existing hardware. The second solution we'll talk about here is zero trust networks. Touched on that just a second ago very briefly, but I'm sure many of you have already started hearing a lot about this lately. And it's becoming essential kind of in tandem with the push for remote work, because as remote work is becoming more and more prevalent, businesses are exposing themselves to more potential external threats. So the integrity of the network is just becoming much more crucial, and probably more than ever before. And one of the components of Digital Workspace solutions is a gateway. And this connects the endpoint devices that a user has to their desktops and their applications. But instead of, or opposed to a standard VPN, a gateway will typically be a client that downloads on that endpoint device, and it secures the device itself, and will have other features built into it, like MFA, like browser-based access, and my personal favorite, geofencing, like what we have. And that what geofencing does, it can block access from a device depending on its geographic location. So, for instance, if you have all of your users, based out of Chicago or something, and you see someone from Moscow trying to get into your network, you got a pretty good idea that you shouldn't let them in. And so, while VPN is only encrypting that, it's really only protecting that brokered connection, a gateway is going to take that a few steps further. And it's going to protect the connection, but also the device itself, while providing optional additional security benefits. And while we do have some content here about how our products adhere to each of these solutions, I'm not going to dig into too much of these, since we do have some slides coming up here that get a little bit more fine-tuned into how our solutions in particular address some of these issues and provide these solutions to these challenges. Another common solution we're talking about with remote work is BYOD. And this is just critical for so many businesses simply due to the massive costs of equipping users with new endpoint hardware, especially when so many companies out there have strapped for budget due to everything that's been going on this year. But one of the huge benefits of digital workspaces is that many of the solutions out there are included allow users to bring their own device to the table without compromising security, and in fact, enhancing security in many ways. And I briefly touched on this earlier, but MFA, or multi-factor authentication, is one of the best methods to do this because it brings an industry security standard to virtually any endpoint device. And there are some other benefits that Workspaces offer BYOD, such as the ability to provide read-only access. You can block screen capping, scan your network for compliance, just to make sure that all of the endpoint devices that are on your network that are attempting to gain access to your network are in compliance with all of your security protocols that you have in place, and a good bit more. And before we jump into this, I had another poll question I was going to throw out there. Well, it looks like we've got most folks wrapping this up, so I'll go ahead and close this polling out. But it looks like cost. Cost is the #1 factor, followed by ease of use. And I don't think I mentioned what the winner of the last poll was. It was VPN for the most common method for accessing the corporate network. And once again, greatly appreciate everybody's participation on that. So now let's dive into our digital workspaces solution, the AmZetta digital workspaces solution, which is comprised of 4 different software components. And the next 4 slides are dedicated to each one of these. So I'm going to spend a whole lot of time on them right now. But I think it's important to break them down a bit here to show especially that digital workspaces solutions are multifaceted. They've got multiple components, each of which addresses each aspect of the remote work and the workspaces solution. And one other thing that I like to mention here is that while we do offer all of these software components as a combined solution, which is what we call AmZetta Digital Workspaces Suite, both the ZPORTAL at the top and ZGATEWay on the right there, those can be purchased separately. So if you only need desktop and application virtualization, or if you only need a secure remote access gateway, respectively, those can be offered as standalone separate products. And then the other 2 products that we're looking at there, ZMFA and ZBROWS, those are optional add-ons just to the ZGATEWay software itself. So make more sense in just a moment here. But the first component that we wanted to dig into, it's called ZPORTAL, AmZetta ZPORTAL. And this is a software controller that resides on your servers and allows you to virtualize desktops and or applications for your clients. If you have either Hyper-V or VMware for your just standard server virtualization, this does deploy directly on top of that. It can also be deployed as a bare metal instance, not as common, but that is a capability that we have. And it also supports shared hosted desktops, which allows you to host multiple users on a single VM or virtual desktop without requiring a one-to-one ratio for VMs to desktops. And this has been gaining a good bit of traction lately since it allows you to fully utilize that VM's resources rather than potentially have some that are underutilized while they may need to be, they may be needed by those resources might be needed some of the other users there. It might be worth noting that ZPORTAL can be deployed on-prem and can be deployed in the cloud. And we can also set up a hybrid instance of that as well. And then last thing here is our high availability and load balancing capabilities. And this is what allows us to distribute the workload for your virtual desktops, for the accessing of your virtual applications across multiple nodes. So it's not only going to increase your overall performance because we can intelligently balance that workload across those multiple nodes, but one of the other huge benefits of this is just the redundancy and the uptime, because in the event that one of these nodes, suffers some type of a hardware failure or some type of a disaster event occurs, then you can fail over to the other nodes and just maintain the same uptime and keep everything running as usual. And the next is our ZGATEWAY software. And this enables secure remote access to the network from practically any device. So this is a highly secure, zero trust endpoint client, supports port control, application-specific access at the user level, the geofencing, user permissions, a ton. So you can really offer granular management features to your clients and the added benefit of having that heightened security. And one of the other cool benefits of ZGATEWAY is how well it scales due to its load balancing feature. And this mainly comes into play, primarily for very large companies and in the enterprise with thousands of users, since ZGATEWAY can recognize those current workloads on the host and then intelligently direct or redirect them based on network utilization. Like I mentioned earlier, while we do offer ZGATEWAY separately as its own standalone solution, if you're just looking for secure remote access for your users, it truly does complement ZPORTAL since it can be used to access virtual desktops and applications that ZPORTAL is able to provide. And I think this is my last poll question. So let me go through this real quick. All right, I'm going to close this one out. I let it run a little bit longer than the others because it was neck and neck. We're at 52% for RDP into a desktop, 48% direct access into virtual apps. So that's very interesting. Pretty fun to watch. Each one was taking the lead over the other for a little bit there, but by and large, very close. But that was the last polling question. We'll get back into the slide deck, and I think I only got a few more slides here, and then we'll get into the demo. But the third component of the digital workspaces solution that we offer is the MFA. So pretty self-explanatory. This is an optional add-on to ZGATEWay, and this gives you all the benefits and assurance of multi-factor authentication and identity verification. So we do support various methods of MFA, including one-time passwords or OTP, digital certificates, and even biometrics. And we have a token feature for mobile phones and devices. And we also have a pretty cool auditing feature where we can document access history at the device level and even trace the locations of the devices that have attempted to gain access to your network. So it's just great for troubleshooting. Or if you have perceived threats coming in, recognizing where they're coming in from and really being able to protect yourself and prevent any type of potential attacks coming in. So the MFA, it's a great way to enhance the security of your remote workers while giving them the ability to utilize nearly any endpoint device. And unlike a lot of our competitors that don't have their own MFA software and rely on third-party options, I won't name any names. ZMFA is native. This is our software, and it can be easily added to any ZGATEWay license, and therefore it can easily be added to practically any endpoint device. And the fourth and final component of our Workspaces solution is ZBROWS. And this allows users to securely access their data and their applications from any browser platform. Chrome, Firefox, Safari, if you happen to be using Internet Explorer or Edge, support those well. And while a huge benefit of ZBROWS is just the simplicity that this offers to your users, because it just gives such a familiar and simple method to access their data and access their applications. Perhaps the largest benefit is for ZBROWS is how much it increases the overall security. Since there's no need to install anything really on any side, the client side RDP host, and it's just locking down that HTML connection. So while it does make it incredibly simple for your users to, continue to utilize their existing endpoint devices to access their data, it does have a tremendous benefit when it comes to security as well. And so just to wrap this all up, kind of bring it all back to home, those four products are what comprise the AmZetta Digital Workspaces solution. So you can see the role that each of these components plays in not only simplifying management and enhancing the user experience, but also dramatically increasing security measures to safeguard your company, as the need to be able to effectively work securely from anywhere and to, like we saw this year, the need to be able to adapt so quickly to unforeseen or totally unprecedented changes in how we work. And the last slide here before we get into that demo, it's just a couple of actionable items. We like to give some things out there for folks in case they are looking for any type of similar solution, just to kind of get a better feel for it. And the first one that we offer is it's actually a cloud sandbox where we've installed instances of both our ZPORTAL and our ZGATEWay software into a sandbox mode. So if you'd like to test out the ZPORTAL desktop and application virtualization software, or if you'd like to test out the ZGATEWay secure remote access gateway software, you can just fill out very simple forms on amzetta.com/demo, and we will send you a username along with a password where you can access the sandbox and test it out for yourself. I believe it's that free trial that runs for 7 days, and there's no credit card or anything like that required. And the second one is our price quote generator, where if you're evaluating options or really just budgeting for the future, you can enter just some basic information there as well as far as your requirements, how many users and what type of software you would be looking for, what type of solution. And we'll send you just a hassle-free price estimate via email. And you can get started on that by going to amzetta.com/pricing. So that's all for me. George, I'll let you take it from here for a demo of digital workspaces.
Awesome, thanks, Andrew. Let me get situated here. There's been some questions coming in that I've been answering. All actually really good. But let me go ahead, share my screen. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So you can see here, what we're going to do is we're going to show how to enable remote access with the ZGATEWAY server. So you can see here, I've opened up the access control configuration. So within here, you'll be able to say, hey, these users can access these apps, right? So what I'm going to do is I have this demo AG application group, and I'm going to search for a group here as an example. I'll go ahead and add that group in here, and I'll submit it. And so that was properly modified. So now all we got to do is actually add in a new application that we would like those set of users to use. So we'll add that in here, and we'll hit this drop down here, and you'll see we have a multitude of options here. We could do things like individual web pages through like an HTTP or an HTTPS. We could do individual desktops through RDP or SSH. But what we're going to focus in on here, though, is going to be our ZPORTAL controller, which is the other half of the suite here. So we'll go ahead and we'll put in a name real quick for this controller. And this controller will allow you to do the applications or the desktop virtualization. So you can see here, I'll go ahead and put the IP, and I'll test the connection. What I'm doing here is making sure that the ZGATEWAY can communicate properly, obviously, so that we can access everything within it. I'll go ahead and add it to the application group. You can see here I have demo AG, just like I did before. And so by adding this application into the demo AG group, those users that I just added into that group will now have access to this application that I'm adding and any other applications that may already be in that application group. So I'll go ahead and I'll submit that. I'll get this done. And so now I have that application created in there. So now we're going to actually open up our ZGATEWAY Z client. This is what a user would utilize to connect to the ZGATEWAY server. And then obviously that would get them access to the applications and desktops that they might have access to. So you can see here it is. All we got to do is input the IP and put in our credentials. So now that I have that in, I actually also have my ZMFA configured. So you can see here it's asking me for a mobile token. So I'll open that up on my phone real quick and put in the password that it gave me. And we'll go ahead and log in. And so now you can see the ZGATEWAY application launchpad is loading up. You can see here, for example, we have hosted applications. We have Chrome and GIMP as an example here. We also have hosted desktops. Those first two options, those are going to be desktops and applications that are being served up by the ZPORTAL controller on the back end. We also have web applications. Like I was mentioning, we can open up specific web pages and things like that. And we also have remote desktops as another option so that we can access desktops, like for example, in the office or anything like that. Basically anything that is not being driven by the ZPORTAL controller. But for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and go back in to the ZPORTAL management console. So we can kind of see how that works as well as far as application and desktop delivery. So we'll go ahead and we'll launch that up. And you can see here is our ZPORTAL management console. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually focus in on the workspace section here. You can see we have application and desktop pool virtualization, sorry. So we'll do an application real quick. We'll add one in. So all we got to do is we're going to choose our application server. And once we have that, we'll go ahead and we'll browse through it so that we can find the executable for the specific application that we're adding. Real quick, if you took note, I only had Chrome as a web browser option. So I'm going to add in Firefox just so that users have a choice. You know, some people like Chrome, some like Firefox. So we'll go ahead and add that in. You can see the icon gets fetched automatically. So all we got to do is give it a name. We won't do anything crazy. We'll just give it Firefox as the name, and we'll hit next. So here under the additional settings, these are settings that kind of make the accessibility easier for the user. One of the options that I like to do is the auto launch option. So any application that you configure in such a manner, when they log in, these things will automatically launch so that everything that they require is up and ready to go as soon as they log in. So here I'm going to choose the server that I need to actually give the application. And now I'm going to choose that same user group that we did earlier just to keep everything consistent here. But there it is. I'll go ahead and add it. And so save it. And now Firefox is ready to go as an application that the users can launch now. So let's focus in on doing a desktop as well. So as we mentioned, we have two versions of it. We can either do shared or dedicated. Shared would be more like a terminal server, whereas dedicated would be more like VDI. You can see here, I have a VMware pool. We also do Hyper-V, like Andrew had mentioned, as far as dedicated goes. Let's go and add one real quick. We'll do a shared one just to kind of be different than what we already have in here. So we have entitlement here. We can either do user-based or device-based. I'm going to do user-based, just that gives me more integration with the AD. But so for the shared hosted desktop, I just need to choose my RDS server, Windows default there. We'll hit next. And now all we really got to do is add our users. I'm going to choose the same group that I've been using the whole time here just to stay consistent. And we'll go ahead and add it in. And so now we have a couple of extra options. For example, client groups that can further restrict access to a specific subset of clients. And we have some advanced options here, but more or less, you can see there the shared pool has been added. It's ready to go. And so with that, that just kind of walks you real quick through how you can actually add in those applications, add in those desktops into the zPortal so that you can then launch them from the Z client. As I showed at the beginning, we had Chrome and GIMP already in the ZGATEWay Z client. Now, if we went back, we would see Firefox as well. But as far as launching, it's super simple. The user logs in, they click on what they want, and they're off and running with either the application or the desktop. Obviously, there's a lot more to this. But really, I mean, if you're like me, you can be talking to me and showing me things all day long, but until I can actually get my hands dirty with it, that's when it really starts to click in my head. And so I do like to recommend and kind of push the sandbox demo so that you can get in there, you can get your hands dirty, you can start clicking around and doing all that sort of thing. But yeah, so that's a great opportunity for you there. But that's it. I just wanted to do just a super quick, super simple demo of it. Don't want to get lost in the details there. So.
Yeah, thanks for running through that, George. And we do have, before we wrap things up, we had some questions that we'll go through, questions that were submitted by some of you all when you were registering for the event. And largely like to focus on the technical questions since, these are primarily technical, events and for learning purposes. So the first one, George, we had Patrick from Colorful, Colorado. He asked if you could compare our solution to what is offered by Horizon View from VMware.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's actually a real good question. So Horizon is going to compare directly to the ZPORTAL part of our digital workspace. So, for example, they both do virtual desktops. They both do virtual apps, shared hosted desktops. You can do remote management, and you have your security features in there. So that's how they kind of are the same. Where it starts to really get different is I would put it down to two different things. I would say pricing and support. So in general, and on average, the offerings from us are going to be about 50% lower than what we've seen with comparable VMware Horizon solutions. But to really talk about the solution here for just, I'm sorry, for the support here for just a second. We use actual solution engineers for our support reps. We're not just doing help desk technicians. So as soon as you call in, you're getting an engineer that knows how everything works, knows the ins and outs of it, can give you direct help to resolve your issue without having to go through 20 different escalation points. So with that, we're saving you time, and also we are 100% based out of the U.S. So when you do call us in for support, you don't have to worry about being routed somewhere outside of the country. Maybe you can't fully understand them, things like that. So we understand that when you're calling in for support, it's a dire situation, and you want the solution to be fast, to be accurate, to be clear. So that's what we're focusing on from a support perspective. And really quickly, another note on that. If you do go for one of our trials, we will handle you as if you were a full customer. So you'll have access to our support team. They'll be there for anything that you might need. Myself or one of my colleagues will be available to you if you need any help configuring any part of either the Z Gateway or the Z Portal to ensure that everything goes smoothly for you. So we're very hands-on, and that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on.
Excellent. Thanks for running through that, George. And I'll jump into another one here from Stephen from South Carolina. How does this type of solution compare with a remote access platform like LogMeIn?
Okay, yeah, for sure. So LogMeIn is going to be more of a DaaS service, so desktop as a service. And it's going to require you to use their specific platform and their specific applications within their platform. For example, they have things like Grasshopper for phone service. They have GoToMeeting, for your meetings and things like that. These apps are great, right? They're integrated right within the LogMeIn overall solution. But you are forced to use those to supplement any requirements. So with us, we're not going to dictate what apps you can and cannot use for your requirements. So we're going to give you total control over the applications, over the desktops, all of that you need to deploy to meet your user needs. So LogMeIn is also 100% cloud. And so they only offer device-based licenses, whereas we're going to be able to install, like you said earlier, we can do on-prem, we can do in the cloud, or we can do a hybrid approach. But we can also do, from a licensing perspective, we can do either named users or devices. So we can also do concurrent, we can also do subscription models. So we give you full flexibility there from a licensing perspective as well, to be able to meet the whatever specific requirements you may have.
Good deal. Thank you for that one as well. We have one here that's GPU specific. Ryan from Kansas asked, is there any kind of GPU pass-through or vGPU available for graphics intensive applications?
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually a very good question. So yeah, we do have support for any sort of heavy graphics applications that would utilize GPU. You would have to set up the vGPU on the virtual machines for those apps. But yeah, it's totally 100% supported by us. We can do graphics rich apps. We can do, 2D apps, 3D apps. For anything that's heavier graphic related, we would require an additional PCOIP license just so that you get the best display performance over the network. But overall, yeah, it's not an issue for us to have heavy graphics applications within the environment.
Good deal. Good deal. Moving on through here, we've got some common ones here, some repeats, so I don't want to say the same thing twice. We had Donald from Virginia. He asked, what additional software or applications will have to be installed for these systems?
Okay, yeah. So I'll break it down between server side and client side. So for the server side, the ZGATEWay server and the ZPORTAL controller, they're just going to be installed as a VM, within your virtual infrastructure, and it's going to be very set. There's nothing additional from a software perspective that you would need for that. On the client side, all we need really is for you to install the Z client on your desktops or laptops or what have you. And then that'll connect either to the ZGATEWay or the ZPORTAL. Another option that we do have, though, we can also do secure browsing through our ZBROWS. So that way, for example, if you're on a Chromebook or something where you can't install apps as easily, you can just launch the browser based ZBROWS client to get into applications and desktops as required. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers that.
Good deal. Thanks for that, George. And I got one more here, one more question here that we'll go through, and I'll actually answer this one. Vernon from Cleveland, Ohio, asked if we offered free trials. And I know that, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but, might take this as an opportunity to get a little bit more in depth with this. So in short, yes, absolutely. And we offered in two different options. And the only one that I discussed at this point was the sandbox that we have available for both ZPORTAL and ZGATEWay, where you just fill out that web form. I've already seen several of them come in since we've been going through these questions. And you fill out the web form, enter basic information, we send you a URL, username and password, and you can access the POC sandbox that way. Evaluate that, get a good look for what not only you would see as an admin managing it, but also from an end user's perspective of what they would see when they're using digital workspaces. So it's a great way to get